15th, 1998, members of the Tectonic Theater Project traveled to Laramie, Wyoming, and conducted interviews with the people of the town.
During the next year, we would return to Laramie several times and conduct over 200 interviews.
The play you're about to see is edited from those interviews, as well as journal entries by members of the company and other found texts.
Company member Greg Pirati.
My first interview was with Detective Sergeant Hing of the Laramie Police Department. At the start of the interview, he was sitting behind his desk, sitting something like this. I was born and raised here. My family is third generation. My grandparents moved here in the early 1900s. We've had basically my daughter makes it fourth generation. Quite a while. It's a good place to live. Good people, lots of space. Now, all the towns in southern Wyoming are laid out in space because the railroad came through. It's how far they could go before having to refuel and rewater, and Laramie was a major stopping point. That's why all the towns are spaced so far apart. We're one of the largest states in the country and the least populated.
There's so much space between people and towns here. So much time for reflection.
Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming.
You have an opportunity to be happy in your life here. I found that the people here are much nicer than in the Midwest, where I used to teach, because they're happy. They're glad the sun is shining, and it shines a lot here.
What you have your old-time traditional type ranchers. They've been here forever. Laramie's been the hub of where they come for their supplies and stuff like that.
Stewardship is one thing all our ancestors taught us.
Eileen Engen, rancher.
If you don't take care of the land, you ruin it, and you lose your living. So first of all, you have to take care of the land and do everything you can to improve it.
I love it here.
Doc O'Connor, limousine driver.
You couldn't put me back in the mess out there back east. Best thing about it is the climate. The cold, the wind. They say the Wyoming wind will drive a man insane, but you know what? It don't bother me. Well, some of the times it bothers me, but most of the time it don't.
And then you got the university population.
I moved here after living in a couple big cities.
Philip Dubois, president of the University of Wyoming.
And I loved it there. You'd have to be out of your mind to let your kids play out till after dark. But here, in the summertime, let kids play out till after 11, and I don't think twice about it.
And then you have the people who live in Laramie, basically.
I moved here from rural Texas.
Zachy Salmon, Laramie resident.
Now, here in Laramie, if you don't know a person, you'll most definitely know someone they know. So there can only be 1 degree removed at most. And for me, I love it. I go to the grocery store and visit with 4 or 5 or 6 people every time I go, and I don't really care if people know my business, because what's my business? My business is basically good.
I like the trains, too. They don't bother me. Well, some of the times they bother me, but most of the time they don't, even though one goes by every 13 minutes out where I live.
Doc actually lives up in Bossler, but everyone in Laramie knows him. He's also not really a doctor.
He used to carry cattle and trains. Now he carries diapers and cars.
I grew up in Cody, Wyoming. April Silva, university student.
Laramie's better than where I grew up. I'll give it that.
It's a good place to live. Good people, lots of space. Now, when the incident happened with that boy, a lot of press people came here. And one time, some of them followed me out to the crime scene. And it was a beautiful day, absolutely gorgeous day. Real clear and crisp, and the sky was that blue that, you'll never be able to paint. It's just sky blue. It's just gorgeous. And the mountains in the background, and a little snow on them. And this one reporter, a lady person that was out there, she said,
Well, who found the boy? Who was out here anyway?
and I said, this is a really popular place for people to run, and mountain biking's really big out here, and horseback riding. Well, it's close to town. And she looked at me and she said,
Who in the hell would want to run out here?
and I was like, lady, you're just missing the point. All you gotta do is turn around, see the mountains, smell the air, just take in what's around you. And they were just nothing but the story. I didn't feel that I was judged, I felt that they were stupid. They're just missing the point. They're just missing the whole point.
It's hard for me to talk about Laramie. If you'd have asked me before, it's hard for me to tell you what Laramie is for us. If you would have asked me before, I would have told you that Laramie is a beautiful town, secluded enough that you can have your own sense of identity, a town with a strong sense of community. Everyone knows everyone. A town with a personality that most larger cities are stripped of. Now, after Matthew, I would say that Laramie is a town defined by an incident. We've become Waco, we've become Jasper. We're a noun, a definition, a sign. We may be able to get rid of that, but it sure will take a while.
Journal entries. Members of the company. Andy Paris.
Moises called and said he had an idea for his next theater project, but there was a somberness to his voice, so I asked what it was all about. He said he wanted to do a piece about what's happening in Wyoming.
Stephen Belber.
Lee told me the company wanted to go out to Laramie to conduct interviews and that they wanted me to come, but I'm hesitant. I have no real interest in prying to a town's unraveling.
Amanda Gronick.
I've never done anything like this in my life. How do you get people to talk to you? What do you ask?
Moises Kaufman.
The company has agreed that we should go to Laramie for a week and interview people. I'm a bit afraid about taking 10 people on a trip of this nature. Must make some safety rules. No one works alone, everyone carries cell phones. Have made some preliminary contacts with Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming. She is hosting a party for us our first night and has promised to introduce us to possible interviewees.
I must tell you, when I first heard you were thinking of coming here, when you first called me, I wanted to say, you've just kicked me in the stomach. Why are you doing this to me? But then I thought, that's stupid. You're not doing this to me. More importantly, I thought about it and decided we've had so much negative closure on this whole thing, and the students really need to talk. When this first happened, they started talking about it, and then the media descended and all the dialogue stopped. You know, I really love my students because they're free thinkers. And you may not like what they have to say, and you may not like their opinions because they can be very redneck. But they're honest and they're truthful. So there's an excitement there. There's a dynamic here with my students that I never had when I was in the Midwest or in North Dakota, because there was so much Puritanism that dictated how people looked at the world, that a lot of times they didn't have an opinion. You couldn't get them to express an opinion. And quite honestly, I'd rather have opinions that I don't like and have that dynamic in education. There's a student I think you should talk to. His name is Jedediah Schultz.
I've lived in Wyoming my whole life. My family's been in Wyoming, well, for generations. Now, when it came time to go to college, my parents couldn't afford to send me. I wanted to study theater, and I knew that if I didn't get a scholarship that I wasn't going to go. And so they have this competition every year, this Wyoming state competition. And I knew that if I didn't take first place in a duets, that I wasn't going to get a scholarship. And so I went to the university looking for good scenes, and I asked one of the professors, I was like, I need a killer scene, and he was like, here you go. And it was from Angels in America. And I read it, and I knew I could win first place if I did a good enough job. And when the time came, I told my mom and my dad so that they would come and see me in this competition. Now you have to understand, my parents go to everything, every ball game, every hockey game, everything I've ever done. And they took me into the room and they told me that if I did that scene, that they would not see me in this competition because they believed it was wrong, that homosexuality is wrong. They believed that strongly in it, that they didn't want to see their own son do probably the most important thing he'd done up until that point in his life. And I didn't know what to do. I had never gone against my parents' wishes before, so I was kind of worried, but I decided to do it. And all I can remember about that competition is that when we were finished, my scene partner and I we came up to each other and we shook hands, and there was a standing ovation. Oh man, it was amazing. And we took home first place, and we won. And that's how I can afford to be here at the university, because of that scene. And it's one of the best moments in my life. And my parents weren't there. And to this day, that's the one thing my parents didn't see me do. And looking back on it, I think, why did I do it? Why did I oppose my parents' wishes? Because I'm not gay. So why did I do it? And I guess the only honest answer I can give is, I wanted to win. It was such a good scene. It was like the best scene. Do you know Mr. Kushner? Maybe you could tell him.
Company member Greg Pierotti.
We arrived today in the Denver airport and drove to Laramie. The moment we crossed the Wyoming border, I swear I saw a herd of buffalo. And I thought it was strange that the Wyoming sign said, Wyoming, like no place on earth, instead of Wyoming, like no place else on earth.
Company member Lee Bondakowski.
Stopped at a local inn to have a bite to eat, and my waitress came over to me and she said,
Hi, my name is Debbie. I was born in 1954, and yes, Debbie Reynolds was big back then, so there are a lot of us, but I promise I won't smack if you leave your elbows on the table.
Today, the company tried to explain to me to no avail what chicken fried steak was.
Now, are you from Wyoming, or are you just passing through?
Or just passing through.
Company member Barbara Pitts.
We arrived in Laramie tonight, just past the Welcome to Laramie sign. Population 26,687. The first thing to greet us was Walmart. In the dark, we could be on any main drag in America, fast food chains, gas stations. But as we drove into the downtown area by the railroad tracks, the building still looked like a turn-of-the-century Western town. Oh, and as we passed the University Inn, on the sign where amenities such as heated pool or cable TV are usually touted, it said, "Hate is not a Laramie value."
Greg Pirati.
I met today with two longtime Laramie residents, Allison Mears and Marge Murray, two social service workers who taught me a thing or two.
Well, what Laramie used to be like when Marge was growing up, well, it was mostly rural.
Yeah, it was. My kids all had horses.
Well, there was more land, you could keep your pet cow, your chickens, your horses, just have your little bit of acreage.
Yeah, I'd run around the house in my all-togethers while the kids were in school and do the housework, and nobody could see me if they got that close.
Well, then that's their problem.
Yeah.
Let me just make sure I'm getting the expression right. In your all-togethers.
Well, yeah, honey, why wear clothes?
Now, how's he gonna use that in his play?
So, this town used to be mostly rural, then?
Well, it not just ranching. It used to be a big railroad town at one time, before they moved everything to Cheyenne and Green River and Omaha. So now, well, it's just a drive-through spot for the railroad. Because even what was it? In the 50s, they had a big roundhouse, and they had such a shop. They could build a complete engine.
They did. My mom worked there.
Your mom worked in a roundhouse?
Yeah, she washed engines. Her name was Minnie. They used to, sing that song. You know that song.
What song?
Run for the roundhouse, Minnie. They can't corner you there. But Wyoming, it's bad in terms of jobs. I mean, the university has big how whoop-de-doo jobs, but in Laramie, unless you're a professional, well, the bulk of people are just working minimum wage jobs.
Yeah, I've been either in the service industry or bartending most of my life now. I know everybody in town.
And she does.
And I do. Now, here in Laramie, there's a difference, and there always has been. What it is a class distinction. It's about the well-educated and the ones that are not. And the ones that are well-educated don't understand why the ones that are not don't get educated. That's why I told you before, my kids had to fight because their mother was a bartender. Never mind, I was the best damn bartender in town.
And she was.
That's not bragging, that's fact.
But here in Laramie, if it wasn't for the university, well, we'd just be SOL.
What's SOL?
Well, do I have to say it? It's shit out of luck. Oh, Lordy, you got that on your tape. Boy, you are getting an education today.
Yeah, I guess I am. So, let me just ask you, what was your response when this happened to Matthew Shepard?
Well, I've been close enough to the case to know many of the people. I have a daughter that's on the sheriff's department. As far as the gay issue, I don't give a damn one way or the other as long as they don't bother me. And even if they did, I just say no thank you. And that's the attitude of most of the Laramie population. They might poke one if they're in a bar situation, might even smack them in the mouth, but then they just whistle on about their business. Laramie is live and let live.
I'd say Marge probably knows a little more, except she's even willing to say, and we have to respect her for that.
Well, where exactly are you going with this story?
We haven't decided yet. We were planning on trying to bring it up to Laramie, though.
Okay, then. There are parts I won't tell you.
When she got up to 80 per, the engineer began to sing to her. Run for the roundhouse, Nellie, your puffin' days are through. The brakes won't hold and your boiler's cold, but we're going in with you.
Today, for the first time, we met someone who actually knew Matthew Shepard. Trish Steger, owner of a local shop in town, referred to him as Matt.
Matt used to come into my shop. That's how I knew him.
It was the first time I had heard him referred to as Matt instead of Matthew. Did he go by Matt to everyone?
Well, on the 2nd of October, I get a phone call, about 10 after 7.
Jack O'Connor.
It was Matthew Shepard, and he said, "Can you pick me up at the corner of 3rd and Grand?" So, anyhow, I pull up to the corner to see who? Matthew Shepard. It's a little guy, about 5'2", soaking wet, I bet you 97 pounds, tops. They say he weighed 110, but I wouldn't believe it. They also said he was 5'5" in the newspapers, but this man, he was really only about 5'1", maybe 5'2". So he walks up to the window. I'm gonna try and go in steps here so you can better understand the principle of this man. So he walks up to the window and I say, "Are you Matthew Shepard?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm Matthew Shepard, but I don't want you to call me Matthew or Mr. Shepard. I don't want you to call me anything. My name is Matt, and I want you to know I'm gay and we're going to a gay bar. Do you have a problem with that?" And I said, "How are you paying?" The fact is, Laramie doesn't have any gay bars, and for that matter, neither does Wyoming. So he was hiring me to take him down to Fort Collins, Colorado, about an hour away. I was a blunt little shit, you know what I'm saying? He always was, but I liked him because he was straight. Forward. You see what I'm saying? Maybe gay, but straightforward. You see what I'm saying?
I don't know, you know. How does any one person ever tell about another? You really should talk to my sister Romaine. She was a very close friend of Matthew's.
We never called him Matthew, actually. Most of the time, we just called him Choo-Choo. You know, because we used to call him Matt-Choo, and then we just called him Choo-Choo. And whenever I think of Matthew, I always think of his incredible beaming smile. I mean, he'd walk in and he'd just be like, ding, you know? He'd just smile at everyone. He made you feel great. And he would, like, stare people down at the coffee shop because he always wanted to sit at the end seat so he could talk to me while I was working. And if someone was sitting in that seat, then he'd just sit there and stare at them until they left, and then he claimed his spot. But Matthew definitely had a political side to him. I mean, he really wanted to get into political affairs. That's all his big interest was watching CNN and MSNBC. I mean, that's the only TV station I ever saw his TV tuned to. He was just really smart in political affairs, but not too smart on, like, common sense things. So he moved to Laramie to go to school.
Matthew was very shy when he first came in.
John Peacock, Matthew Shepard's academic advisor.
To the point of being somewhat mousy, I'd almost say. He was having some difficulties adjusting, but this was home for him, and he made that quite clear. And so his mousiness, his shyness, gave way to a person who was excited about this track that he was going to embark on. He was just figuring out human rights, how he was going to do that. And when a person does this, they begin to bloom a little bit. He was just starting to say, wow, there are opportunities here. There are things I can do in this world. I can be important.
I did hear from Matthew about 48 hours before his attack. He had told me that he joined the gay and lesbian group on campus and that he said he was enjoying it. He was just really stoked about school. Yeah, he was really happy about being there.
And in retrospect, and I can only say this in retrospect, of course, I think that's where he was headed towards human rights, which only adds to the irony and tragedy of this.
Let me tell you something else here. There's more gay people in Wyoming than meets the eye. I know for a fact. They're not particularly, what do you call them? The queens, the gay people queens, run on faggot type people. No, they're the ones that throw bail, hay, jump on horses, brand them, and kick ass. You see what I'm saying? As I always say, don't fuck with a Wyoming queer, because he'll kick you in your fucking ass. But that's not the point of what I'm trying to say, because I know a lot of gay people in Wyoming. I know a lot of people, period. I've lived up here some 40-odd years. You see what I'm saying? And I don't think Wyoming people give a damn one way or another if you're gay or straight. That's just what I said. It doesn't matter. If there are 8 men and 1 woman in a Wyoming bar, which is often the case, now you stop to think who's getting what. You see what I'm saying? Jeez, don't take a big intelligent mind to figure that one out.
My understanding when I first came here,
Catherine Connolly,
is that I was the first out gay person or faculty member on campus. During my interview, I was asked what my husband did for a living, and so I came out then. Do you want to hear a funny story?
Sure.
When you first come here as a new faculty member, there's all these things you have to do. And so I was in my office, and I noticed that this woman called him, so I called her back. And I could hear her. She was typing on her keyboard, clicking away. I said, this is Kathy Connolly returning your phone call. And she said, oh, it's you. And I thought, this is bizarre. And she said, I hear you're gay. I hear you are. And I said, uh-huh. And she said, I hear you came out as a gay couple. I'm one too. Not a couple, just a person. And so she was the type of lesbian who knew I was coming over, and she wanted to come over and meet me immediately. And she later told me that there were other lesbians who wouldn't be seen with me, that I would irreparably taint them, that just being seen with me could be a problem.
When I first came here, I knew it was going to be hard as a gay man.
Jonas Slonaker.
But I kept telling myself, people should live where they want to live. And there'd be times I would go down to Denver, and I would go to gay bars, and people would ask me where I'm from. And I'd say, Laramie, Wyoming. And I met so many men down there from Wyoming, so many gay men who grew up here, and they're like, this is not a place I can live. How can you live there? I had to get out. Grr. But every once in a while, there would be a guy, oh, gosh, I miss Laramie. I mean, I really love it there. That's where I want to live. And they get this starry-eyed look, And I'm like, if that's where you want to live, do it. I mean, imagine if more gay people stayed in small towns. But it's easier said than done, of course.
Today, we are moving from our motel and heading for the best Western.
Moises Kaufman.
My hope is that it is a better Western.
Amanda Gronick.
Today we divided to go to different churches in the community. Moises and I were given a Baptist church. We were greeted at the beginning by the Reverend himself standing at the front of the chapel. This is what I remember from his sermon that morning.
My dear brothers and sisters, I am here today to bring you the word of the Lord. Now, I have a simple truth that I tell to my colleagues, and I'm going to tell to you today. The word is either sufficient or it is not. Scientists tell me that human history, that the world is 5 billion or 6 billion years old, give or take. After all, what's a billion years? The Bible tells me that human history is 6,000 years old. The word is either sufficient or it is not.
The sociology of religion in the West.
Stephen Mead Johnson, Unitarian minister.
Dominant religious traditions in this town. Baptist, Mormon. They're everywhere. It's not just Salt Lake, you know? Like jam on toast down here.
The Mormon church has a little different thing going for it that irritates some folks.
Doug Laws, state ecclesiastical leader for the Mormon church.
And that is that we absolutely believe that God still speaks to man. We believe that God speaks to man today, and we believe that. We don't believe that it happened and some folks wrote it in the Bible. God speaks to us today, and we believe that the prophets of the church have the authority to receive inspiration and revelation from God.
So the spectrum would be, on the left side, so far left that I'm probably sitting by myself, is me, and the Unitarian church. Unitarianists are by and large humanists, many of whom are atheists. I mean, we're not even sure we're religion. And to my right on the spectrum, to his credit, Father Roger, Catholic priest, who is well established in this town, God bless him, he did not equivocate at all when this happened. He hosted the vigil for Matthew that night.
I was really jolted because, when we did the vigil, we wanted to get the other ministers involved, and we called some of them, and they weren't going to get involved. And it was like, we're going to stand back and see which way the wind's blowing. And that angered me immensely. We're supposed to stand out as leaders. I thought, wow, what is going on here?
God has set boundaries, and one of our responsibilities is to learn. What is it that God wants? So you study scriptures, and you look to your leaders, and then you sort of know what God wants. Now, once you sort of know what the bounds are, then you kind of get a feel for what's out of bounds. There's a proclamation that came out on the family. A family is defined as one woman, one man, and children, and that's it. That's about as simple as I can put it. There's no sexual deviation in the Mormon church. No leniency. We just think that it's out of bounds.
I warn you, you will be mocked. You will be ridiculed for the singularity of your faith. But you let the Bible be your guide. It's in there. It's all in there.
The Christian pastors, many of the conservative ones, were silent on this. Conservative Christians use the Bible to show the rest of the world it says here in the Bible. And many Americans believe, and they do, that the Bible is the Word of God. And how are you going to fight that?
I'm a biblicist, which means the Bible doesn't need me to be true. The Bible is true whether I believe it or not. The Word is either sufficient or it is not.
I arrived in Laramie on September 15th. I looked around, tumbleweed, cement factory, and said, what in the hell am I doing in Wyoming? 3 weeks later, I found out what the hell I'm doing in Wyoming.
I had breakfast this morning with a university student named Zubaida Ullah. She's an Islamic feminist who likes to do things her own way.
I've lived in Laramie since I was 4. Yeah, my parents are from Bangladesh. 2 years ago, because I'm Muslim, I decided to start wearing a scarf. That's really changed my life here in Laramie. Yeah, like people say things to me like, why do you have to wear that thing on your head? Like when I go to the grocery store, I'm not looking to give people Islam 101, you know what I mean? So I'll be like, well, it's a part of my religion. And they'll be, this is the worst part, because they'll be like, I know it's part of your religion, but why? And it's just, how am I supposed to go into the whole doctrine of physical modesty and my own spiritual relationship with the Lord, standing there with my pop and chips? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, it's so unreal to me that, that a group from New York would be doing a play about Laramie. And I was just picturing, like, you're going to be in a play about my town. You're going to be on stage in New York, and you're going to be acting like you're us. That's so weird.
Hello?
Yes, hello, my name is Amanda Gronick. I'm here in Laramie working with a theater company. I went to the Reverend's, your husband's, services on Sunday, and I was extremely interested in speaking with the Reverend about his views on recent events.
Well, I don't think he'll want to talk to you. He has very biblical views about homosexuality. He doesn't condone that kind of violence, but he doesn't condone that kind of lifestyle. You know what I mean? He was just bombarded with press after this happened, and the media's just been terrible about the whole thing.
No, I'm sure it must have been just terrible.
Oh, yes. I think we're all just hoping this goes away.
Well, do you think I could call back and speak with the Reverend just briefly?
Well, all right. You can call him back tonight at 9 o'clock.
Thank you very much. I'll do that.
I would swallow my pride, I would choke on the rinds, but the lack thereof would leave me empty inside. Swallow my doubt, turn it inside out, find nothing but faith in nothing. Wanna put my tender heart in a blender.
Today, Barbara and I went to the Fireside Bar, which is the last place Matthew was seen in public.
The Fireside definitely feels like a college bar with a couple of pool tables and a stage for karaoke night. Still, the few regulars in the late afternoon were hardly the college crowd.
The first person we talked to was Matt Mickelson, the owner.
My great-great-grandfather moved here in 1862. He owned Laramie's first opera house. It was called Old Blue Front. And in 1870, Louisa Grandma Swain cast the first woman's ballot in any free election in the world. And that's why Wyoming is the equality state. So what I want to do is reestablish my bar business as Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium. I want to have a restaurant. I want to have a gift shop. I want to have a pool hall. I want to have all this shit, you know? Every night's ladies' night. So the Fireside is the first step towards Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium.
So, what about the night after Shepard was here?
We had karaoke that night. 20 or 30 people here. Matthew was sitting right where you're sitting. Just hanging out. I mean, if you want to talk to somebody about it, you should talk to Matt Galloway. He was the kid that was bartending that night. You'd have to meet him. His character stands for itself. Hey, is Galloway bartending tonight?
All right, I'm going to make this brief, quick, get it over with. But it will be everything. Factual, just the facts. Here we go. 10 o'clock, I clock in, usual time Tuesday nights. 10:30, Matthew Shepard shows up alone, sits down, orders a Heineken.
Phil LaBrie, friends of Matthew Shepard.
Matt liked to drink Heineken and nothing else. Heineken, even though you'd have to pay $9.50 for a six-pack, would always buy the same drink.
So, what can I tell you about Matt? If you had 100 customers like him, it'd be the most perfect bar I've ever been in. And nothing to do with sexual orientation, absolute mannerisms, manners, politeness, intelligence, taking care of me, as in tips. You know, some people you just know, sits down, please, thank you, offers intellect within their vocabulary. So he kicks it there, didn't seem to have any worries or like he was looking for anyone, just enjoys drinking the company around. Now, approximately 11:45, Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson walk in. I didn't know their names then, but they're the accused. They're the perps, the accused. So McKinney and Henderson walk in, and as you know, came up to the bar and ordered a pitcher with dimes and quarters. I mean, that's something you don't forget. $5.50 in dimes and quarters, that's a freaking nightmare. So McKinney and Henderson, they didn't seem intoxicated at all. They just came up to the bar, took their beer back with them into the pool room, and kept it themselves. Next thing I knew, probably about a half hour later, they were walking around, no beer. And I remember thinking, I'm obviously not going to ask them if they want another one because they just paid for a pitcher with dimes and quarters. I got a real good feeling they don't have any more money.
Romaine Patterson. Money meant nothing to Matthew because he came from a lot of it. And he would, hand over his wallet in 2 seconds because money meant nothing. His shoes might have meant something. They can call it a robbery. I don't believe it, for an iota of a second.
So then I looked up, and next thing I knew, McKinney and Henderson were talking to Matthew Shepard.
Aaron said a guy walked up to him and said that he was gay and that he wanted to get with Aaron and Russ.
Kristen Price, girlfriend of Aaron McKinney.
And he got aggravated, saying that he was straight and that he didn't want to have anything to do with him, and walked off. He said that's when he and Russ went into the bathroom and decided to pretend that they were gay and get him in the truck and rob him.
Okay, no. They stated that Matt approached them, that he came on to them. I positively disbelieve and refute that statement 100%. Refute it. I'll give you 2 reasons why. 1, character reference. Why would he come on to them? Why them? He wasn't coming on to anybody else in the bar. They say he's a gay, he's a flaming gay, he's gonna come on to people like that. Never came on to me. Hello? 2, territorialism is the word I'll use for this. And that's the fact that Matt was sitting right there. McKinney and Henderson were back there in the pool room. Upon their first interaction, they were in Matt's area, the area that Matt had been seen all night. So who approached who by that?
But Matt was the kind of person, he'd never not talk to anyone, for any reason. If someone started talking to him, he'd just be like, oh, blah, 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 you know? He never had any problem just striking up conversation with anybody.
Matt did feel lonely a lot of the time. Me knowing that and knowing how gullible he could be, he would have walked right into it. The fact that he was alone at the bar that night without any friends made him that much more vulnerable.
So the only thing is, and this is basically what I'm testifying to because I'm basically the key eyewitness in this case. Basically, what I'm testifying is that I saw Matthew leave. I saw 2 individuals leave with Matthew. I didn't see their faces, but I saw the back of their heads. At the same time, McKinney and Henderson were gone. You do the math.
Actually, I think the DJ was the last one to talk to him on his way out that night. Give him a cigarette or something. His name is Shadow.
I was the last person to talk to Matt before he left the fireside. I was just bullshitting around with my shit, and he stopped me. I stopped him, actually. He's like, hey, Shadow, da-da-da. I'm like, what, man, you getting ready to leave? He's like, yeah, man, and this and that. But then I noticed them 2 guys, and they stood outside. You could see it. You could see it. They were standing there, and he was looking over to them, and they were looking back at him. And I stood and talked to Matt for a good 10 minutes. And you could see them guys with him. You could see him getting, worried, anxious to leave and shit. So when they took off, I seen it, when they took off. It was a black truck. It was a small truck. 3 of them sat in front, Matt sat in the middle. I didn't think nothing of it, I didn't figure them guys was going to be like that.
A friend of Aaron McKinney.
Oh, I've known Aaron a long time. Aaron was a good kid. I liked Aaron a lot. That's why I was shocked when I heard this. I know he was living out far. At his trailer house is what he told me, with his girl. They just started dating last summer. They must have gotten pregnant as soon as they started dating, because they had a kid. He was just 21 years old. He was running around with a kid. You see, that's the kind of person Aaron was. Always dressed in big clothes, Tommy Hilfiger, Polo, Gucci. At the time I knew him, he was just a kid, trying to fit in. Acting tough, acting cool, but, you could get in his face about it and he'd back down. Like he was some kind of scared kid.
Sherry Anderson.
Russell was just so sweet. He was the one who was the Eagle Scout. His whole presence was just quiet and sweet, so... it didn't really make sense to me. And I know people snap, and, it wasn't a real intimate relationship. I was just his landlord. We did work together at the Chuck Wagon, too. And I remember this one time at the Christmas party, he was totally drunk out of his mind. We were all pretty much at, party time, and he wasn't belligerent. He didn't change. His personality didn't change. He was still the same little sweet Russell, and I remember him coming up to me and saying, when you get a chance, Sherry, can I have a dance? Which... we never did get around to doing that, but now I just want to shake him, What were you thinking? What in the hell were you thinking?
Fence. Been out there 4 times. I've taken visitors. The place has become a pilgrimage site. Clearly, that's a very powerful personal experience to go out there. It's so stark and so empty, and you can't help but think of Matthew there for 18 hours in nearly freezing temperatures, with that view up there isolated. And the God, my God, why have you forsaken me, comes to mind.
Company member Greg Pierotti.
Phil Labrie, a friend of Matthew's, took us to the fence this morning. I broke down the minute I touched it. I feel such a strong kinship with this young man. On the way back, I made sure that nobody saw me crying.
Greg was crying on the way back. I felt the same way, but I couldn't bring myself to tears.
I have an interview later this afternoon with Aaron Kreifels. He's the boy who found Matthew at the fence. But I don't think I'm up for it right now. I'll see if someone else can do it.
Well, I took off on my bike around 5 o'clock p.m. on a Wednesday from my dorm. I just kind of felt like going for a ride, so I went to the top of Cactus Canyon, and I'm not super familiar with that area, so as I was going down, I was sort of picking the way to go, which now, it just feels like God wanted me to find him because there was no way that I was going to go that way. So I was in some deep-ass sand, and I felt like turning around, but for some reason, I kept going, and there was a rock on the ground, and I just drilled it. I went over the handlebars and ended up on the ground. So I was looking around, and I noticed something, which ended up to be Matt, and he was just lying there by a fence. So I picked up my bike and wheeled it around the fence. It was a buck-type fence, and then I noticed his hair, and that was a major key to me. Noticing that it was a human being was his hair, because I just thought it was a dummy, you know? I even saw the chest going up and down. Thought it was like some kind of mechanism, but then I saw hair, and I knew it was a human being, so I ran to the nearest house and ran as fast as I could and called the police.
I responded to the call.
Officer Reggie Flutie.
When I got there, at first, the only thing I could see was partially somebody's feet, so I got out of my vehicle and raced over. I seen what appeared to be a young man, 13, 14 years old, because he was so tiny, lying on his back, and he was tied to the bottom end of the pole. I did the best I could. The gentleman that was on the ground, Matthew Shepard, he was covered in dry blood, and there was blood all over him. There was dry blood underneath him, and he was barely breathing. He was doing the best he could. I was going to breathe for him, but I couldn't get his mouth to open. His mouth wouldn't open for me. He was covered in, like I said, partially dry blood and blood all over his head. The only place where he did not have any blood on him, on his face, was what appeared to be where he'd been crying down his face. His head was distorted, you know? It did not look normal. It looked as if he'd had a real harsh head wound.
I was working in the emergency room the night Matthew Shepard was brought in, and I don't think that any of us can remember seeing a patient in that condition for a very long time. Some of us who've worked in big city hospitals have seen this before, but we have some folks who've not worked in a big city hospital, and it's not something you expect. You expect this kind of injuries to come from a car going down a hill at 80 miles an hour. You expect gross injuries from something like that, this horrendous, terrible thing. But you don't expect to see it from someone doing it to another person. The ambulance report said it was a beating, so we knew.
There was nothing else I could have done. I mean, if there was anything I could have done, I would have done it, but there was nothing. And I was like shouting at the top of my lungs at him, trying to get something out of him, like, hey, wake up, hello. But he didn't move, he didn't flinch, he didn't anything.
He was tied to the fence. His hands were thumbs out, what we call a cuffing position, the way we handcuff people. He was bound with a real thin white rope that went around the bottom end of the pole about 4 inches up off the ground. His shoes are missing. He was tied extremely tight, so I had to use my boot knife and tried to slip it between the rope and his wrist. I had to be extremely careful not to harm Matthew any further.
Your first thought is, well, certainly you'd like to think that it's somebody from out of town that comes through and beats somebody. But if there's been somebody who's been beaten repeatedly, then certainly that is something that offends us. I think that's a good word. It offends us.
He was bound so tight. I found I got the knife through there. I'm sorry. We rolled him over to his left side, and when we did that, he quit breathing. Immediately, I put him back on his back side, and that was just enough of an adjustment. It gave me just enough room to cut him free. I seen the EMS unit trying to get to the location, and once the ambulance got there, we put a neck collar on him, placed him on a backboard, and scooted him from underneath the fence. Then Rob drove the ambulance to Ivanson Hospital emergency room.
Now, the strange thing is, 20 minutes before Matthew Shepard came in, Aaron McKinney was brought in by his girlfriend. Now, I guess he'd gotten into a fight later on that night back in town, so I'm working on Aaron, and the ambulance comes in with Matthew. And at this point, I don't know that there's a connection at all. So I go and tell Aaron to wait, and I go and treat Matthew. As soon as he saw Matthew, it was very obvious that his care was beyond our capabilities. I called the neurosurgeon at Poudre Valley, and he was on the road in an hour and 15, I think.
They showed me a picture. Days later, I saw a picture of Matthew. I would have never recognized him.
Then 2 days later, I found out the connection, and I was very struck. There were 2 kids. They were both of my patients, and they were 2 kids. I took care of both of them. Both are bodies. And for a brief moment, I wondered if this is how God feels when he looks down at us. We are all kids. Our bodies, our souls, and I felt a great deal of compassion for both of them.
This is John Peacock, Matthew Shepard's academic advisor.
Well, the news reports started trickling out on Thursday, but no names were mentioned. The brutality of the crime was not mentioned. All that was mentioned was that there was a man,
Laramie man found beaten,
out on the prairie, basically. Then later on, they mentioned his name. It was like, that can't, that's not the Matthew Shepard I know. It's not my student, it's not this person who I've been meeting with. I was in the coffee shop.
Romaine Patterson.
And someone pulled me aside and said, I don't know much, but they say that there's been a young man who's been beaten in Laramie, and they say that his name was Matthew Shepard, and he said, do you think this could be our Matthew? And I said, well, yeah, it sounds like it could be our Matthew. So I called up my sister Trish, and I said, tell me what you know. I'm just like, I need to know anything you know because I don't know anything.
So I'm talking to my sister on the phone, and that's when the whole story came up on Channel 5 News, and it was just like, ba-boom.
And the news reports kept rolling in.
Young University of Wyoming student.
His age, his description, it's like, oh my God.
And I felt sick to my stomach, just instantly sick to my stomach. And I had to tell Romaine, yes, it was Matthew, it was your friend.
Well, I'll tell you what's overwhelming.
Matt Galloway.
So Friday morning, I first find out about it. Go to class, walk out, and boom, there it is, the branding iron. So I drive to the nearest newsstand, buy a Laramie boomerang because I want more details, buy that, go home. Before I can even open the paper, my boss calls and he says,
Did you hear about what happened?
I'm like, yeah.
Was he at the bar Tuesday night?
I go, yes, he was.
You've got to get down to the bar right now. We've got to talk about this. We've got to discuss what's going on.
By this time, I was starting to get upset, but still, the severity wasn't out yet.
It was Thursday afternoon.
Rulon Stacy at Poudre Valley Hospital.
I got a call. We got a kid in from Wyoming, and it looks like he may be the victim of a hate crime. We have a few newspaper reporters here asking questions. And so, we agreed we needed one spokesperson. As CEO, I'll do that, and we'll try and gather all the information that we can.
And then I watched the 10 o'clock news that night when they started speaking about the nature and the seriousness of it.
So I'm on the phone with Mickelson, and he's like,
we need to go to the arraignment so we can identify these guys and make sure these guys are in the bar.
So we go to the arraignment.
Our focus today turns to Laramie, Wyoming and the Albany County Courthouse, where Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson are charged with the brutal beating of Matthew Shepard, a gay University of Wyoming student.
The hearing was on Friday, right around lunchtime, and I said, I'm just going, I just took off, it's just down the street. And so I walked a few blocks and I went. Has anybody told you about the arraignment?
No.
There were probably about 100 people from town and as many news reporters by that point. A lot more of the details had come out. The fact that the perpetrators were kids, local kids that everyone who's from around here has some relationship to. And what everyone was really thinking, I think, waiting on pins of needles for, when the perpetrators walked in. They walked in their complete orange jumpsuits and shackles, and you could have heard a pin drop. It was incredibly solemn. I mean, lots of people were already through at that point, but then the judge came in and did a reading. It was a reading of the facts that the prosecution has, and the reading of the facts was...
The essential facts are that the defendants, Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson, met Matthew Shepard at the Fireside Bar, and after Mr. Shepard confided he was gay, subjects deceived Mr. Shepard into leaving with them in their vehicle to a remote area. Upon arrival at said area, both subjects tied their victim to a buck fence, robbed him, tortured him, and beat him. Both defendants were later contacted by officers of the Laramie Police Department, who observed inside the cab of their pickup a credit card and a pair of black patent leather shoes belonging to the victim, Matthew Shepard. Subjects took the victim.
I don't think there was anyone in the room who wasn't crying at this point. I mean, it lasted 5 minutes, but it just kept on getting more and more horrific, ending with...
Said defendants left the victim begging for his life.
Sergeant Hink.
How could this happen? I think a lot of people just don't understand, and even I don't really understand how someone can do something like that. I mean, we have one of the most vocal populations of gay people in the state, and it's pretty much live and let live.
Laramie resident Jeffrey Lockwood.
My secret hope was that they were from somewhere else. That then, of course, you can create that distance. Like, we don't grow children like that here. Well, it's pretty clear that we do grow children like that here.
So that was the arraignment, and my response was pretty catatonic, not sleeping, not eating. Don't leave me alone right now.
More and more details came in about the sheer brutality, motivations, how this happened. And then, quite frankly, the media descended, and there was no time to reflect on it anymore.
Laramie, Wyoming, often called the gem seat of the plains, is now at the eye of the storm. The
Both
capital
Aaron
state has
McKinney
its
and his
rednecks
friend
and
Russell
yellows
Henderson
for sure,
came from the
but
poor
there
side
are
of
no more
town.
bigots
As a
per
gay
capita in
college
Wyoming
student lay
than there are in New
hospitalized
York,
in critical
Florida, or
condition,
California.
this small
The
city,
difference
which
is
built
People
that
would like to
Wyoming,
think what
there are
happened to
fewer
Matthew
places
Shepard
to
was an
live in
exception
other
to
than
the rule,
Bristol.
but it's an extreme version of what happens in our towns on a daily basis.
It's a tough business, as Matt Shepard knew, and as his friends all know, to be gay in cowboy country.
It was huge, yeah, it was herds, and we're talking hundreds of news reporters, which makes a huge dent in this town's population. There are reporters everywhere, news trucks, everywhere on campus, everywhere in the town, and we're not used to that type of attention to begin with. We're not used to that type of exposure.
Tiffany Edwards, local reporter.
These people are predators. Like this one journalist caught one of the judges in the bathroom at the urinal and was like asking him questions, and the judge was like, "Excuse me, can I please have some privacy?" And the journalist was like, offended that he asked for privacy. I mean, this is not how journalism started. Like the Gutenberg press, you know?
I'll tell you what, when hard copy came and taped me, I taped them at the exact same time. I have every word I ever said on tape, so if they ever do anything funny, they'll watch their fucking ass.
Wyoming Governor Jim Geringer, a first-term Republican up for re-election.
I am outraged and sickened by the heinous crime committed on Matthew Shepard. I would like to extend my most heartfelt sympathies to the family.
Governor, you haven't pushed hate crime legislation in the past.
I would like to urge the people of Wyoming against overreacting in a way that gives certain groups special rights over others. We will wait and see if the vicious beating and torture of Matthew Shepard was motivated by hate.
You got the beginning of the news story, and they have the graphics in the background. They say, "Murder in Wyoming," and Wyoming's painted red like it's got blood on it or something. And we're like, what is this? This is sensationalism. And we're here going, well, wait a minute. We had the guys in jail in less than a day. I think that's pretty damn good.
And for us to be more or less maligned,
Eileen and Gil Engen,
that we are not a good community. And we are. The majority of people here are good people.
You get bad apples once in a while, and I think that the gay community saw this as an advantage. So this is a good time for us to exploit this.
Bill McKinney, father of one of the accused.
Had this been a heterosexual those two boys decided to take out and rob, this never would have made national news. Now my son's guilty before he's even had a trial.
Look, I do think that the media actually made people accountable because it made people think, because people were sitting in their homes watching TV and listening to CNN and watching Dan Rather and going, well, Jesus Christ, that's not how it is here. Well, how is it here?
Matthew Shepard, medical update at 3 p.m. Saturday, October 10th.
By this point, I looked out where there had been 2 or 3 reporters. It must have been 10 or 15 still photographers, another 20 or 30 reporters, and 10 video cameras. The parents had just arrived. I barely introduced myself to them. I looked out there and I thought, my gosh, what am I going to do? Matthew Shepard was admitted in critical condition approximately 9:15 p.m., October 7th. When he arrived, he was unresponsive and breathing support was being provided. Matthew's major injuries upon arrival consisted of hypothermia and a fracture from behind his head to just in front of the right ear. This has caused bleeding in the brain as well as pressure on the brain. There were also several lacerations on his head, face, and neck. Matthew's temperature has fluctuated over the last 24 hours, ranging from 98 to 106 degrees. We've had difficulty controlling his temperature. Matthew's parents arrived at 7 p.m., October 9th, and are now at his bedside. The following is a statement from them. First of all, we want to thank the American public for their kind thoughts about Matthew and their fond wishes for his speedy recovery. We appreciate your prayers and goodwill, and we know that there's something Matthew would appreciate too. We also have a special request for the members of the media. Matthew is very much in need of his family at this time, and we ask that you respect our privacy as well as Matthew's, so we can concentrate all of our efforts, thoughts, and love on our son. Thank you very much.
Both Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson pled not guilty to charges. Their girlfriends, Chastity Paisley and Kristen Price, also pled not guilty after being charged as accessories after the fact. On our next trip, we met with the chief investigating officer on the case, Detective Rob Debris of the Albany County Sheriff's Department.
I guess the thing that bothered me the most when I went down to Poudre Valley where Matthew was, the thing that bothered me the most is seeing him, touching him. As a homicide detective, you look at bodies, and this poor boy is sitting here, fighting all his life trying to make it. I wanted it so by the book, you know?
I keep seeing that picture in my head of when I found him.
Aaron Kreifels.
And it's not pleasant whatsoever. I don't want it to be there. I want to, get it out. And that's the biggest thing for me, is just seeing him there. And it's still kind of unbelievable to me, you know, that I happen to be the person who found him. Because the big question with me, with my religion, is why did God want me to find him?
I know how to take care of myself, but I was irrationally terrified.
Catherine Connolly.
So what that means is not letting my 12-year-old son walk the streets, seeing a truck do a U-turn and thinking it's coming after me, having to stop because I'm shaking so bad, but in fact, the truck was never coming after me, but my reaction was to have my heart in my mouth.
Ultimately, no matter how you dice it, I did have an opportunity.
Matt Galloway.
If I had amazing hindsight at 2020 to have stopped what occurred, and I keep thinking, I should have noticed. These guys shouldn't have been talking to this guy. Should have not had my head down for those 20 seconds while I was washing dishes. What the hell was I thinking? Things I could have done.
So you do a lot of studying. You spend hours and hours and hours. You study and study and study, talking to the officers, making sure they understand, and talking to the witnesses again, and always coming back to, I get this flash of seeing Matthew. I wanted it so tight, there was no way they were going to get out of this.
One of the things that happened when I got to the fence,
Reggie Flutie.
It was just such an overwhelming amount of blood, and we tried to wear protective gloves. We had a really cheap sheriff at the time, and he bought us shit gloves, you know? You put them on, and they keep breaking, so finally you run out of gloves, you know? So you figure, well, don't hesitate. That's what your mind tells you all the time, don't hesitate. So you just try to keep moving and help Matthew and find an airway, and that's what you do, you know?
The thing I wasn't telling you before is that Reggie is my daughter.
Marge Murray.
And when she first told me she wanted to be a police officer, well, I thought there was not a better choice for her. She could handle whatever came her way.
Probably a day and a half later, the hospital called me and told me that Matthew had HIV. And they said, you've been exposed and you've had a bad exposure. Because you see, I've been building a lean-to for my llamas, and I had a bunch of open cuts on my hands, so I was kind of screwed, you know? And you think, oh shoot, you know?
She likes to talk about losing sleep.
So I said, okay, what do I do? And they said, get up here. So I got up there and started taking the ATZ drugs immediately.
Now, they told me that's medication, that if it's administered 36 hours after you've been exposed, it can maybe stop your chances of getting the disease.
That is a mean, nasty medicine. Mean. I've lost 10 pounds and a lot of my hair. Yeah.
Quite frankly, I wanted to lash out at somebody. Not at Matthew. Please understand that not one of us was mad at Matthew, but maybe wanted to smash McKinney's head off. And I think about Henderson, and two absolutely human beings cause so much grief for so many people. It has been just terrible for my whole family, but mostly for her and her kids.
I think about home to my girls what their mom does for a living.
Reggie, you know what I'm going to tell you now.
And my parents, they both told me, they both said the same damn thing.
You're quitting this damn job.
And it's just a parent thing, because they're terribly proud of you and you do a good job, whether it's handling a drunk or handling a case like this, but they don't want you getting hurt.
Like I said, there's a right way, a wrong way, and then there's Reggie's way.
So finally I said, oh, for God's sakes, lighten up, Francis.
You are so stubborn.
They say I'm stubborn and I don't believe them. But I just think, okay, I've heard your opinion, now here's mine. I'm 39 years old, What are you gonna do, spank me?
Reggie, don't give me any ideas.
It'll look pretty funny, What can I say?
I just hope she doesn't go before me. I just couldn't handle that.
University of Wyoming President Philip Dubois.
Well, this is a young person who read my statement on the Denver Post story and sent an email to me directly and said,
You and the straight people of Laramie are as guilty of the beating of Matthew Shepard as the Germans who looked the other way at the deaths of the Jews, the gypsies, and the homosexuals. You have taught your straight children to hate their gay and lesbian brothers and sisters. So unless and until you acknowledge that Matthew Shepard's beating was not just a random occurrence, not the work of a bunch of crazies, you have Matthew's blood on your hands.
And, well, I just can't begin to tell you what that does to you. It's like, you can't possibly know what I'm thinking. You can't possibly know what this has done to me, my family, my community.
That first week alone, vigils for Matthew Shepard were held in Laramie, Denver, Fort Collins, and Colorado Springs.
Soon after, in Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco, Washington, D.C.,
Atlanta, Nashville, Minneapolis, and Portland, Maine, among others.
In Los Angeles, 5,000 people gathered. And in New York City, political rallies ended in civil disobedience and hundreds of arrests.
The Prairie Valley Hospital website received close to over 1 million visitors from across the country and around the world, all expressing hope for Matthew's recovery. Matthew Shepard medical update at 9 a.m. Sunday, October 11th.
As of 9 a.m. today, Matthew Shepard remains in critical condition. The family continues to emphasize that the media respect their privacy. The family also wants to thank the American public for their kind thoughts and concern for Matthew.
There are certain things when I sit in church.
Jedediah Schultz.
And the Reverend will tell you flat out that he doesn't agree with homosexuality. And right now, I don't know. I think I'm still going through changes, and I don't think I know enough about certain things to make a decision that says homosexuality is right when you've been raised your whole life that it's wrong. And right now, I guess I would say that I don't agree with it. Yeah, I don't agree with it, but maybe that's just because I couldn't do it. And speaking in religious terms, I don't think that's how God intended it to happen. But I don't hate homosexuals. Like, I'm not going to persecute them or anything like that at all. Like, that's not going to be getting in the way between me and the other person at all.
Well, it's preached in schools that being gay is okay and yada, yada, yada.
Conrad Miller.
And if my kids asked me, I'd set them down and I'd say, well, this is what gay people do. This is what animals do, okay? This is the life, this is the lifestyle. And I tell them, this is why I believe it's wrong.
There's a lot more gay people around than what you think.
Murdoch Cooper.
Don't bother most people because most of them that are gay or lesbian, they know damn well who to talk to. If you step out of line, you're asking for it. Now, some people are saying that Matthew Shepard made a pass at them. You don't pick up regular people. I'm not excusing their actions, but it made me feel a little better to know that it was partially Matthew Shepard's fault and partially the guys who did it. You know, maybe it's 50-50.
Yes, as a lesbian, I was more concerned for my safety.
Saki Salmon.
I think we all were, and I think it's because somewhere inside we all know that it could happen to us at any time. I mean, I would be afraid to walk down the street and show any sort of physical affection for my partner. You don't do that here in Laramie.
Well, there's this whole idea. You leave me alone, I leave you alone.
Jonas Slonaker.
And it's even in some of the Western literature, you know, live and let live. It is such crap. I tell my friends that. Even my gay friends bring it up sometimes. I'm like, this is crap, you know? Because basically what it boils down to is if I don't tell you I'm a fag, you won't beat the crap out of me? What's so great about that? That's a great philosophy?
We went to the candle vigil.
Zubaida Ola.
And it was so good to be with people who felt like shit. I kept feeling like I don't deserve to feel this way, you know? And then some guy got up there and he said, blah, 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 blah. And then he said, I'm not saying it right, but basically he said, come on, guys, let's show the world that Laramie is not this kind of a town. But it is that kind of a town. If it happened here, how could this not be the kind of a town where that thing happens? You know what I mean? Like, that's a lie. It's just totally like looking at an Escher painting and getting all confused. Totally circular logic. Like, how can you even say that? We have to mourn this. We have to be sad that we live in a city, a state, a country where shit like this happens. Because these are people trying to distance themselves from this crime. And we need to own this crime, I feel. We are like this. We are like this. We are like this.
How about getting off of these antibiotics? How about stopping eating when
This afternoon, I went to the Fireside Bar and ran into two friends of Aaron McKinney, Shannon and Jen. You knew Aaron well, right?
Yeah, we both did. When I found out, I thought it was really, really awful. I didn't know whether Aaron was fucked up or whether he was coming down or what. But Matthew had money. Shit, he had better clothes than I did. Matthew was a little rich bitch.
You shouldn't call him a little rich bitch, though. It's not right.
Well, I'm not saying he's a bad guy either, because he was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. Said the wrong things, and I don't know. I won't lie to you. There were times that I was all messed up on meth, and I thought about going out and robbing. I mean, I never did, but the thought was there. It's easy money.
Aaron's done that kind of thing before. They've both done it. I know one night they went to Cheyenne to go do it, and they came back with probably $300. I don't know if they ever, chose gay people as their particular targets, but anyone who looked like they had a lot of money and could be outnumbered or overpowered was fair game.
Do you think there was any homophobia involved at all that may have contributed to some of this?
Probably. It probably would have pissed him off that Matthew was gay, because he didn't really like the gay people that I've seen him interact with. He was fine, as long as they didn't hit on him, as long as it didn't come up.
As long as they weren't doing it in front of him.
Do you get the impression he knew other gay people?
I'm sure he knew other people that are gay. I mean, he worked up at a KFC, and there's a couple people up there that... Yeah, I'm not saying it's bad or anything, because half the people I know here in Laramie are gay.
What would you guys say to Aaron if you could see him right now?
First of all, I'd ask him if he's doing more tweak.
If I saw Aaron now, I'd be like, man, why did you fuck up like that? But I'd probably just want to make sure he's doing good in there. I'm sure he is, though. I don't know. I just want to hang out with him.
Smoke a bowl with him.
Bet he wants one so bad.
You both went to Laramie High?
Yeah. Can't you tell? We're a product of our society.
On a day that is traditionally given over to nothing more profound than collegiate exuberance in the fortunes of the University of Wyoming football team, this community on the High Plains had a different kind of homecoming Saturday as many searched their souls in the wake of a vicious, apparent anti-gay hate crime. University President Philip Dubois.
This was homecoming weekend. There were a lot of people in town, and there was a homecoming parade scheduled, and the students organized to tag behind it. You know, behind the banner supporting Matt. And everyone wearing those armbands the students created.
I live in the center of town.
Harry Woods.
And my apartment has windows on two opposite side streets. One goes north and one goes south. That's exactly the homecoming parade route. Now, on the day of the parade, I had a cast on my leg because of a fall. I was very disappointed because I had wanted to walk with the people who were marching for Matt. But I couldn't, so I watched from my window. And it was just, I'm 52 years old, and I'm gay. I've lived here for many years, and I've seen a lot. And I was very moved by the tag on the end of the homecoming parade. About 100 people walking behind a banner for Matthew Shepard. So then the parade went down to the end of the block to make a U-turn, and I went to the other side of my apartment to wait for it to come south down the other street.
I was right up in front there where they were holding the banner for Matthew, and let me tell you, it was one of the most incredible things I've ever done. I'd never had goosebumps so long in my life. I mean, it was a mass of people, families, mothers holding their 6-year-old kids and tying these armbands around their 6-year-old kids and trying to explain to them why they should wear an armband. It was absolutely one of the most beautiful things I've ever done in my life.
So about 10 minutes went by, and sure enough, the parade started coming down the street, and it was incredible. The number of people marching for Matthew Shepard had grown 5 times. There were at least 500 people marching for Matthew. 500 people. Can you imagine? And people just kept joining in. And you know what? I started to cry. Tears were streaming down my face. And I thought, thank God I got to see this in my lifetime. And my second thought was, thank you, Matthew.
I really haven't been all that involved, per se. My husband's a highway patrolman, so that's really the only way that I've known about it. Now, when I first found out, I just thought it was horrible. I can't. Nobody deserves that. I don't care who you are. But the other thing that was not brought out at the same time that happened, that patrolman was killed, and there was nothing. Nothing. They didn't say anything about the old man that killed him. He was driving down the road and shouldn't have been driving and killed him. It was just a little piece in the paper, and we lost one of our guys. You know, my husband worked with him. This man was brand new on the force, but I mean, here's one of ours, and it's just a little piece in the paper. And a lot of it is my feeling that the media is portraying Matthew Shepard as a saint and making him as a martyr. And I don't think he was. I don't think he was that pure. Now, I didn't know him, but I just found out so many things about him, about his character and spreading AIDS and a few other things. You know, being the kind of person that he was just a barfly, you know? And I think he pushed himself around. I think he flaunted it. Everybody's got problems, but why they exemplified him, I don't know. What's the difference if you're gay? A hate crime is a hate crime. If you murder somebody, you hate them. It has nothing to do with if you're gay or a prostitute or whatever. I don't understand. I don't understand.
Company member Lee Fondakowski.
It's one of our last days on our second trip to Laramie. Greg and I have been conducting interviews nonstop, and we are exhausted.
We're to meet Father Roger at 7:30 this morning. I was wishing we could skip it all together, but we have to follow through to the end. So, here we go. 7:30 a.m. 2 queers and a Catholic priest.
Matthew Shepard has served us well. Do you realize that? He has served us well. And I do not mean to condemn Matthew to perfection, but I cannot mention anyone who has done more for this community than Matthew Shepard. Now, I'm not going to stand here and say, oh, I was just this bold guy, no fear. I was scared. I was very vocal in this community when this happened. And I thought, you know, should we call the bishop and ask him permission to do the vigil? And then I was like, hell no, we're not going to do that. His permission doesn't make it correct. Do you realize that? And I'm not knocking bishops, but what is correct is correct. You people are just here on a search, though. I will do this. I will trust that if you write a play of this, that you say it right, say it correct. I think you have a responsibility to do that. Don't make matters worse. You think violence is what they did to Matthew? They did do violence to Matthew. But you know, every time you're called a fag or a les or whatever.
Or a dyke.
Dyke, yeah, dyke. Do you realize that that is violence? That is the seed of violence. And I would resent it immensely if you were to use anything I said to somehow cultivate that kind of violence, even in its smallest form. I would resent it immensely. You need to know that.
Thank you, Father, for saying that.
Just deal with what is true. You know what is true. You need to do your best to say it correct.
Hello.
Reverend?
Yes, hello?
I believe your wife told you a bit about why I'm contacting you.
Yes, she did, and let me tell you, I'm not sure that I really want to talk about any of this incident. I am somewhat involved, and I just don't
I
think
completely understand, and I don't blame you. You know, I went to your services on Sunday.
You went to services on Sunday?
Yes, I did.
On Sunday?
Yes, this past Sunday.
Did I meet you?
Yes, you welcomed me at the beginning, I believe.
Ah, well, I see. As I said, I am somewhat involved, and that the certain people in the case, well, the girlfriend of one of the accused is a member of our congregation, and one of the accused has visited.
Mm-hmm.
Now, those two people, the accused, have forfeited their lives. We've been after the two I mentioned for ages, trying to get them to live right, to do right. Now one boy is on suicide watch, and I'm working with him. Until they put him in the chair and turn on the juice, I will work for his salvation. Now, I think they deserve the death penalty, but I will try and deal with them spiritually.
Right, I understand.
Now, as for the victim, I know that lifestyle is legal, but I will tell you one thing. I hope that Matthew Shepard, as he was tied to that fence, had time to reflect on a moment when someone had spoken the word of the Lord to him, that before he slipped into a coma, he had a chance to reflect on his lifestyle.
Thank you, Reverend. I appreciate your speaking with me.
About 11:30 that night, I'd just barely gone to bed. Margot, our chief operating officer, called. His blood pressures began to drop. Well, let's wait and see. She called me about 10 after. He had just died. So I quick got dressed and came to the ICU where the family was, and Judy came up and she threw her arms around me and I threw my arms around her, and we just stood there, honestly, for about 10 minutes. Because just what else do you do? And then we had to talk about things that just... Dennis, it's public knowledge now. I need to go out and tell the whole world what's happened here. Because by this point, it was clear. It was the world. It was the whole world. So Judy came up to me, and she told me what she wanted me to say. So I went out at 4 o'clock a.m.
Matthew Shepard, medical update at 4:30 a.m., Monday, October 12th.
At 12 midnight on Monday, October 12th, Matthew Shepard's blood pressure began to drop. We immediately notified the family, who were already at the hospital. At 12:53 a.m., Matthew Shepard died. His family was at his bedside. The family did release the following statement. The family again asked me to express their sincerest gratitude to the entire world for the overwhelming response for their son. The family was grateful that they did not have to make a decision regarding whether or not to continue life support for their son. Like a good son, he was caring to the end and removed guilt or stress from the family. He came into this world premature and left it premature. Matthew's mother said, "Go home. Give your kids a hug. Don't let a day go by without telling them that you love them." I don't know how I let that happen. I lost it on national television. But you know, we'd been up for 72 hours straight and then gone back to bed for half an hour and then had to come back in, and maybe I was just way, I don't know, but in a moment of complete brain deadness, I'm out there reading that statement, I thought about my own 4 daughters and go home on your kids. It's like she doesn't have her kid anymore. And I'm out there reading this statement, I'm thinking, this is so lame. And we started to get these letters and emails. Most of them were generally very kind, but I did get this one. This guy wrote to me and said, "Do you cry like a baby for all your patients or just the faggots?" And like I told you before, homosexuality is not a lifestyle with which I agree. But having been thrown into all this, I guess I never realized the magnitude of which some people hate. And out of all the letters that we got, there were maybe 2 or 3 that were like that. Most of them were, thank you for your caring and compassion. And Matthew had caring compassion from the moment he got here.
I spoke to Doc today and told him we'd soon be returning for the upcoming trials of Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson. This is what he had to say.
I'll tell you what. If they put those 2 boys to death, that would defeat everything Matt would be thinking about on them. Because Matt would not want those 2 to die. He'd want to leave them with hope. H-O-P-E. Just like the whole world hoped that Matt would survive. The whole thing, you see, the whole thing ropes around hope. H-O-P-E.
The day of the funeral, it was snowing so bad. Big, huge, wet snowflakes. And by the time I got there were already thousands of people there and just black with umbrellas everywhere. And there were 2 churches, one for the immediate family, invited guests, people of that nature, and one for everybody else that wanted to be there. And there were still hundreds of people that couldn't fit into either of the churches. And there was a big park outside, and that's where these people were. This park was full.
The liturgy today is an Easter liturgy. It finds its meaning in the resurrection. The service invites your full participation. The Lord be with you. Let us pray.
And I guess it was like the worst storm that they had had.
Tiffany Edwards.
Like that anybody had ever seen. Like trees were falling down and the power went out for a couple of days, and I just thought, it's like the forces of the universe at work, Whatever higher spirit, that blows storms was blowing this storm.
For our brother Matthew, let us pray to our Lord, Jesus Christ, who said, "I'm the resurrection and the life. We pray to the Lord. Lord.
My most
you
striking
persuade
memory
Martha
from the
and Mary
funeral
to distress.
Carrie Drake, Casper Star Tribune.
is seeing the Reverend Fred Phelps from Kansas. That scene go up in the park.
Do you believe in the Bible? Do you believe you're supposed to separate the precious from the vile? You don't believe that part of the Bible, do you? You stand there ignorant of the fact that the Bible, for every 2 verses, it talks about God's love, it talks about God's hate.
A bunch of high school kids came over from across the street and started yelling at the people in the protest, the Fred Phelps people. And then you had people lining up for the funeral. Well, I remember this one guy, this skinhead dressed in leather and spikes everywhere. He came over from across the street and came into the crowd, and I just thought, oh, this is going to be a really ugly confrontation. But he led us in amazing grace.
We wouldn't be here if this was just another murder the state was going to deal with. The state deals with hundreds of murders every single day. But this murder is different because the fags are dragging us out here trying to make Matthew Shepard to a poster boy for the gay lifestyle. And we're going to answer it. It's just that simple.
6 months later, the company would return to Laramie for the trial of Russell Arthur Henderson, the first of the 2 perpetrators. When we got to the Albany County Courthouse, Fred Phelps was already there.
You don't like that attribute guy.
But so was Romaine Patterson.
That perfect attribute of God. Well, we love that attribute of God, and we're going to preach it because God's hatred is pure. It's a determination. It's a determination that he's going to send some people to hell. That's God's hatred.
After seeing Fred Phelps protesting at Matthew's funeral and finding out that he was coming back to Laramie for the trial of Russell Henderson, I decided that someone needed to stand toe-to-toe with this guy and show the differences. And I think that at times like this, when we're talking about hatred as much as the nation is right now, that someone needs to show that there's a better way of dealing with that kind of hatred. So, our idea is to dress up like angels. And so we've designed an angel outfit. Our wings are huge. They're like these big-ass wings, and there's gonna be 10 to 20 of us that are angels. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna encircle Phelps, and because of our big wings, we're gonna completely block him. And so this big-ass band of angels comes in. We don't say a fucking word. We just turn our backs, and we stand there, and we are a group of people bringing forth a message of peace and love and compassion, and we're calling it Angel Action. Yeah, this 21-year-old little lesbian is ready to walk the line with him.
When those old preachers laid their hands on me, it's called an ordination. Then they deliver a charge. Mine was from Isaiah 58:1. Cry loud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgressions.
And I knew that my angels were going to have to be taking the brunt for everything he had to yell and say. I mean, we were going to be blocking his view. He was going to be like pissed off to all hell. So I went out and bought all my angels earplugs.
The court is in session.
Trish Steger, Romaine Patterson's sister.
As soon as they started jury selection, everybody was coming into my shop with, I don't want to be on this trial, I hope they don't call me, or, oh my God, I've been called, how do I get off? Just wanting to get as far away from it as they could. Very fearful that they're going to have to be on that jury. And then I heard Henderson had to sit in the courtroom while they questioned the prospective jurors. And one of the questions that they ask is, would you be willing to put this person to death? And I understand that a lot of the comments were, yes, I would.
Yes, I would, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
No problem.
Yep. Well, can you imagine hearing that? Juror after juror after juror?
You entered a not guilty plea earlier, Mr. Henderson, but I understand you wish to change your plea today. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
You understand, Mr. Henderson, that the recommended sentence here is 2 life sentences.
Yes, Your Honor.
You understand that these may run consecutively or they may run concurrently.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Henderson, I will now ask how you wish to plead, guilty or not guilty.
Guilty.
Before the court decides whether these sentences will be consecutive or concurrent, I understand there are statements to be made by at least one individual.
The following is an excerpt from a statement made to the court by Lucy Thompson.
As the grandmother and the person who raised Russell, along with my family, we have written the following statement. Our hearts ache for the pain and suffering the Shepards have went through. We have prayed for your family since the beginning. Many times throughout the day, I have thought about Matt, and you will continue to be in our thoughts and prayers as we know that your pain
will never go away. You've showed such mercy in allowing us to have this plea, and we are so grateful that you were giving us all the opportunity to live. Your Honor, we, as a family, hope that as you sentence Russell, that you will do it concurrently 2 life terms. For the Russell we know and love, we humbly plead, Your Honor, to not take Russell completely out of our lives forever.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson, you have a constitutional right to make a statement if you would like to do so. Do you have anything you wish to say?
Yes, I would, Your Honor. Mr. and Mrs. Shepard, there is not a moment that goes by that I don't see what happened that night. I know what I did was very wrong, and I regret greatly what I did. You have my greatest sympathy for what happened, and I hope that one day you will be able to find it in your hearts to forgive me. Your Honor, I know what I did was wrong. I'm very sorry for what I did, and I'm ready to pay my debt for what I did.
Mr. Henderson, you drove the vehicle that took Matthew Shepard to his death. You bound him to that fence in order that he may be more savagely beaten, and in order that he may not escape to tell his tale. You left him out there for 18 hours, knowing full well that he was there, perhaps having an opportunity to save his life, and yet you did nothing. Mr. Henderson, this court does not believe that you really feel any true remorse for your part in this matter, and I wonder whether you fully understand the gravity of what you've done. The court finds it appropriate, therefore, that sentence be ordered as follows. As to count 3, that being felony murder with robbery, you are to serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. On count 1, kidnapping, that you serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. Sentencing for count 1 to run consecutive to sentencing for count 3.
After the hearing, we spoke to Russell Henderson's Mormon home teacher.
I've known Russell's family for 38 years. Russell's only 21, so I've known him his entire life. I ordained Russell a priest of the Mormon Church, so you can imagine when this happened. Disbelief. After the sentencing, the church held a disciplinary council, and the result of this was to excommunicate Russell from the church. And what this means is your name is taken off the records of the church, so you basically just disappear. Russell's reaction to this was not positive. It hurt him, and it hurt him to realize how serious a transgression he had committed. But I will not desert Russell. That is a matter of my religion and my friendship with the family.
Before we left Laramie, we met again with Rebecca Hilliker. She is producing Angels in America this year at the university.
I think that's the focus the university has taken, is that we have a lot of work to do, that we have an obligation to find ways to reach our students. But the question is, how do we move? How do we reach a whole state where there's some really deep-seated hostility towards gays? How do we reach them? This is the beginning, and guess who's auditioning for the lead?
My parents.
Jedediah Schultz.
So my parents were like, what plays are you doing this year for school? And I was like, Angels in America. And they go, huh, is that play you did in high school, that scene you did in high school? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, you gonna audition for it? And I said, yeah. She goes, huh. And we get into this huge argument. And the best thing that I knew that I had on them is that this was right after they'd come and see me in a production of Macbeth, and on stage I killed like this kid and Lady Macduff and 2 other people, and she turns to me and she says, well, you know homosexuality is a sin. She kept on saying that, and I said, Mom, I just played a murderer tonight, and you didn't seem to have a problem with that. I've never prepared myself that much for an audition in my life. Never, ever. Not even close.
I don't deal with the gay society that much in Laramie.
Detective Sergeant Rob Debris.
Well, once we started working into the case and actually talking to the people that were gay and finding out what their underlying fears were, well, then it sort of hit home. This is America. You don't have the right to feel that fear. And we're probably still going to have people who hold the old ideals, and I was probably one of them 14 months ago. I'm not going to put up with it and I'm not gonna listen to it. And if they don't like my views on it, fine. The
Well,
door goes both ways. I already lost a couple of buddies. I feel more comfortable and I can sleep at night.
Well, you're tested every 3 months.
Reggie Flutie.
And I was able to have the DNA test done, and they got me to Fort Collins. We drew the blood there, flew to Michigan, and did all the DNA tests, and which was a week later. I knew I was negative for good.
I'll tell you, we were all on our knees saying Hail Marys.
You were just elated, you know, and you think, thank God.
So what's the first thing she does?
I stuck my tongue right in my husband's mouth. I was just really happy, And you think, yeah, I hope I did this service well. I hope I did it with some kind of integrity. You're just really happy. And my daughters just bawled.
Oh, they were so happy.
And the force?
Oh boy.
We went out and got shit-faced. They all brought me drinks too. It was great. And everybody hugged and cried, and you know, I kissed everybody who walked through that door.
Reggie, he don't need to know that.
I didn't care if they were male or female. They each got a kiss on the lips.
What about what I just said? Did you not understand?
Oh, get over it, Ma.
Almost a year to the day that Matthew Shepard died, the trial for Aaron James McKinney was set to begin.
Probably the question that most of you have in your minds is how the McKinney case will proceed.
Cal Rabucha, prosecuting attorney.
And it's the decision of the county attorney's office that will definitely be a death penalty case.
Part of me wants McKinney to get it, but I'm not very proud of that. I was on and off and on. I couldn't say I'm too personally involved.
Oh, I believe in the death penalty 100%. Because I want to make sure that guy's ass dies. This is one instance where I truly believe an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
I don't know about the death penalty, but I don't want to see them ever walk out of Rollins Penitentiary. I'll pay a nickel or whatever, my little percentage of tax, a nickel a day, to make sure that his ass stays in there and never sees society again. And definitely never comes into my bar again.
I don't believe in the death penalty. It's too much for me. I don't think that one person should be killed as redemption for his having killed another. Two wrongs don't make a right.
How can I protest if the Shepards want McKinney dead? I just can't interfere in that. But on a personal level, I knew Aaron in grade school. We never called him Aaron. He was called AJ. How can we put AJ McKinney to death?
I think right now our most important teachers must be Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney. They have to be our teachers. How did you learn? What did we as a society do to teach you that? See, I don't know if many people will let them be their teacher, but I think it'd be wonderful if the judge said, in addition to your sentence, you must tell your story. You must tell your story.
All rise. State of Wyoming versus Aaron James McKinney. Docket number 6381. The Honorable Barton R. Vigoy presiding. The court is in session.
During the trial of Aaron McKinney, the prosecution played a taped recording of his confession.
My name is Rob DeBree, Sergeant for the Sheriff's Office. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and may be used against you in a court of law.
The following is an excerpt of that confession.
So you guys, you and Russ, so you go to the fireside. So you're at the fireside by yourselves, right?
Yeah.
Where do you go after you leave the fireside?
Some kid wanted to ride home.
What's he look like?
Like a queer. He's such a queer dude.
He looks like a queer.
Yeah, like a fag, you know?
Okay, how did you meet him?
Well, kid wanted to ride home, and I thought, dude's drunk, we'll just take him home.
When did you and Russ talk about jacking him up?
We kind of talked about it at the bar a bit.
Okay, what happened next?
Well, we drove him out past Walmart, and he started putting his hand on my leg and putting his hand on my genitals, and I'm like, dude, I'm not a fucking faggot. If you don't stop, you're gonna get it. I don't know what the kid was trying to do, but I beat him up pretty bad. I think I killed him.
What'd you beat him with?
I blacked out. My fist, my pistol, butt the gun. I don't know. It was like I had a couple of beers, and it was like I could see what was happening, but it was like somebody else was doing it.
What was the first thing that he said or that he did in the truck that made you hit him?
He put his hand on my leg and slid it up as if he was gonna grab my balls.
When the defense team argued that McKinney did what he did because Matthew made a pass at him, I just wanted to vomit because that's like saying that it's okay. It's like the Twinkie defense when that guy killed Harvey Milk and Moscone. It's the same thing.
As much as a part of me didn't want the defense of them, saying that it was gay bashing or gay panic, part of me was really grateful because I was really scared that in the trial, they were going to try to say it was a robbery or it was about drugs. So when they used gay panic as their defense, I felt, this is good. The truth is coming out. If nothing else, the truth is going to be told.
Did he ever try to defend himself against you or hit you back?
I mean, yeah, he tried his little swings or whatever, but he wasn't very effective.
How many times did you hit him inside the truck before you guys stopped where you left him?
I don't know, I'd say about 2 or 3 times in the truck. Probably 3 times with my fist, 6 times with the butt of the gun.
So, Russ, I'm assuming, dragged him to the fence and tied him up.
Something like that. I just remember that Russ was laughing at first, but then he got pretty scared.
Was Matthew conscious when Russ tied him up?
Yeah, I told him to turn around and not look at my license plate because, I was scared he would tell the police. And I told him to read my license plate, and he read it, so I hit him a couple more times.
Just to be sure. So, obviously, you don't like gay people.
No, I don't.
Would you say that you hate them?
I wouldn't say I hate them, just when they start coming on to me and stuff, I get, pretty aggravated.
Can you tell me one thing? Why did you guys take his shoes?
I don't know. Now I'm never going to get to see my son again.
I don't know. You'll probably go to court sometime today.
Today? You mean I'm just going to go in there and plead guilty or not guilty today?
No. You're just going to be arraigned today.
Is he going to die for sure?
There is no doubt that Mr. Shepard is going to die.
So what are they going to give me? 25 to life or just the death penalty and get it over with?
It's not our job. It's the judge's job and the jury.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. We, the jury, impaneled and sworn to try the above entitled case. After having well and truly tried the matter, unanimously find as follows. As to the charge of kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of aggravated robbery, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of first-degree felony murder, kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of
Aaron McKinney was found guilty of felony murder, which means the jury could give him the death penalty. That evening, Judy and Dennis Shepard approached McKinney's defense team, who pled for their client's life. The prosecution indicated that they would defer to the family's wishes as to whether or not to pursue the death penalty. The following morning, Dennis Shepard gave a statement to the court. Here is some of what he said.
My son Matthew did not look like a winner. He was rather uncoordinated and wore braces from the age of 13 till the day he died. However, in all his too brief life, he proved that he was a winner. On October 6, 1998, my son tried to show the world that he could win again. On October 12, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero lost. On October 12, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero died, 50 days before his 22nd birthday. I keep wondering the same thing that I did when I first saw him in the hospital. What would he have become? How could he have changed this piece of the world to make it better? Matt officially died in a hospital in Fort Collins, Colorado. He actually died on the outskirts of Laramie, tied to a fence. You, Mr. McKinney, with your friend Mr. Henderson, left him out there by himself. But he wasn't alone. There were his lifelong friends with him, friends that he had grown up with. You're probably wondering who these friends were. First, he had the beautiful night sky, and the same stars and moon that we used to see through a telescope. Then he had the daylight and the sun to shine on him. And through it all, he was breathing in the scent of pine trees from the snowy range. He heard the wind, the ever-present Wyoming wind, for the last time. He had one more friend with him. He had God. I feel better knowing he wasn't alone. Matt's beating, hospitalization, and funeral focused worldwide attention on hate. Good is coming out of evil. People have said enough is enough. I miss my son. but I'm proud to be able to say that he is my son. Judy has been quoted as being against the death penalty. It has been stated that Matt was against the death penalty. Both of these statements are wrong. Matt believed that there were crimes and incidents that justify the death penalty. I, too, believe in the death penalty. I would like nothing better than to see you die, Mr. McKinney. However, this is the time to begin the healing process. To show mercy to someone who refused to show any mercy. Mr. McKinney, I'm going to grant you life, as hard as it is for me to do so, because of Matthew. Every time you celebrate Christmas, a birthday, the 4th of July, remember that Matt isn't. Every time you wake up in your prison cell, remember that you had the opportunity and the ability to stop your actions that night. You robbed me of something very precious, and I will never forgive you for that. Mr. McKinney, I give you life in the memory of one who no longer lives. May you have a long life. May you thank Matthew every day for it.
Me and Debris hugged and cried, and everybody had tears in their eyes, and we were just so thankful. And Mr. Shepard was crying, and that got beanball, and everyone just...
This has been our case every day for a year. Daily. This has been my case daily, and now it's over.
Maybe now we can go on and we can quit being stuck, you know?
It just hit me today. The reason, the minute I walked out of the courtroom, that the reason that God wanted me to find him is for he didn't have to die out there all alone. Because if I wouldn't have came along, they wouldn't have found him for a couple weeks at least. So it makes me feel really good that he didn't have to die out there all alone.
I'm just glad it's over. I really am. I mean, testifying in that trial was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. And don't get me wrong, I love the stage. I really do love it. But it's tough because what you have is you have lawyers questioning you from this angle, and the answers have to be funneled over to the jury. And that's tough for me because I'm a natural conversationalist. So it's just natural instinct that when somebody asks you a question, you want to look them in the eye to answer. But what you have to do is you got to set up like a funneling system where you receive the question from the jury, you scoot over, change your position, in effect, funnel the answer over to the jury. But I was able to do that successfully several times over the course of my testimony.
On our last trip to Laramie, I had the good fortune of seeing Jedediah Schultz play the role of Pryor in Angels of America. After the performance, we spoke.
I didn't, for the longest time, allow myself to get personally involved with the Matthew Shepard thing. It just seemed way blown out of proportion. Matthew Shepard was a name instead of an individual. I don't know. It's weird, man. I just feel bad for all that stuff I told you, for the person I used to be. That's why I wanted to listen to those interviews from last year, when I said all that stuff. I just can't believe I ever said that stuff about homosexuals. I mean, how did I ever let that make me think that you were any different than me?
This is Romaine Patterson.
Well, a year ago I wanted to be a rock star. That was my goal, and that's obviously changed in the fact that within the past year I've really realized my role in taking my part. So now instead of going to school for music, I'm going to school for communications and political science, and I'm actually being honored in Washington, D.C. from the Anti-Defamation League, and whenever I think of the Angels or any of the speaking that I've done, Matthew's like guiding this little path with his light for me to walk down, and every time we get to like a door, he opens it, and he's just like, okay, next step. And if I get to be a rock star on the side, okay.
This is Jonas Slonaker.
Change is not an easy thing, and I don't think people were up to it here. I mean, they got what they wanted. Those two boys got what they deserved. Justice has been served. The OK Corral. We sent the prostitutes on the train. The town's been cleared up, and we don't need to talk about it anymore. You know, it's been over a year since Matthew Shepard died, and they haven't passed shit in Wyoming. At a state level, any town, nobody anywhere has passed any kind of anti-discrimination legislation. So what's come out of this that's truly concrete and lasting?
We all said we'd meet again. One last time at the fence.
I've been up to that site in a limousine, okay? And I remember to myself the night he and I drove around together. He said to me, Laramie sparkles, doesn't it? And from where he was up there, she said exactly where he was up there. Laramie sparkles from there, the low-lying cloud. It's the blue lights from the airport. It's bouncing off the clouds, and it goes right over the whole city. I mean, it blows you away. And Matt was right there in that spot. I could just picture in his eyes. I could just picture what he was seeing. The last thing he saw on this earth was the sparkling lights.
We spent the last 2 days packing a year's worth of materials and saying our goodbyes. We've been here 6 times and conducted over 200 interviews. Jedediah cried when he said goodbye.
Marge wished us luck, and when we asked her how Laramie would feel about seeing a play about itself, she said,
I think we'd like it. To show it's not the hellhole of the earth would be nice. But that is up to how you portray us, and that in turn is up to how we behave.
And as we were getting off the phone, she said to me,
Now, you take care, honey. I love you.
Doc asked me if I'd be willing to ghostwrite a book about the whole event, and Galloway offered me or anyone else a place to stay if and when we come back to Laramie. And he also seemed interested as to whether there'd be any open auditions for the play.
We left Laramie at about 7 in the evening. On our way to Denver, I took one last look in the mirror to take one last look at the town.
And I will speak with you. I will trust that if you write a play of this, that you say it right. You need to do your best to say it correct.
And in the distance, I could see the sparkling lights of Laramie, Wyoming.
Trying to spell